One of the things that we deal with on a consistent basis from a Christian vantage point is the issue of sharing the gospel. So tell me about perhaps one of the most startling times that you had endured or dealt with in sharing the gospel.
Startling. Okay.
Yeah.
There are two that come to mind when you say the word startling. The first is we were in Kansas City a few years ago, sharing the gospel on stage with a metal band at a metal music festival. And as I'm sure you could expect at a heavy metal music festival, it's not expected. It catches people off guard when someone starts sharing the gospel. Right. So this guy starts screaming back at me, saying, shut up, we're not in church. And I don't usually address people like that, but I kind of just look at him to let him know, I see you out there, you're not just an obscure face in the crowd. Mm-hmm. And he keeps going. And he's like, well, you think you can just tell us how to live our life just because you're on the stage? Eventually he gets so riled up by the fact that I'm looking at him but not acknowledging him verbally or stopping, that he jumps up onto the stage.
Oh.
And pushes me while he takes the microphone out of my hand.
Wow.
And proceeds to tell the crowd that nobody can force their beliefs down their throat, and those sort of things. You don't have to listen to this. Think for yourself. These kinds of things. And so then he got done and handed the microphone back to me and hopped off the stage. And then a number of people gave their lives to Christ that day.
Oh. You just never know.
He's
right?
just he's driving them away from whatever he had going on.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
Because people saw this guy's demeanor and they thought, I don't want anything to do with that. And I think by comparison, this Christianity thing seems pretty good.
Yeah.
And then there was another time, if we're going to talk about startling, a friend and I were in Australia. I was doing a conference down there, and me and a couple of the other speakers were out at a mall. And my friend, he says to this girl behind the counter, "Hey, sweetheart," says to this girl behind the counter, he says, "Hey, do you have a relationship with Jesus?" And she said, "No." And he says, "Would you like one?" And she says, "Yes." And as preachers and evangelists, we're kind of like, wait a minute, this is easier than we thought it was going to be. And it turns out that she said, well, I've been going to church for a few months. As we questioned her more, she said, I've been going to church for a couple months now, just trying to figure out what all the hype is about. And she said, the pastor has talked about a relationship with God, and I've wanted that, but I just didn't know where to start. And she said, so you coming in here, this is perfect. I want a relationship with God.
Wow.
And that was startling for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not usually like that.
Well, isn't that just like the Spirit, though?
Absolutely.
The Spirit is startling.
He does all the work. He does
right.
the heavy lifting anyway. I don't know what we should expect. And it really sort of drew me out of again, which I think is something I need to get drawn out of more often than I'd like to admit. This idea that someone's decision to follow Christ or to rededicate their life to Christ, it drew me out of this idea that somehow depends on my performance or my ability to persuade them or
not the Holy
dominate
Spirit.
the conversation. Right. It's only the Holy Spirit that can do that. And so it's really as simple and as beautiful to us as if someone spent their life committed to this interaction. Hey, excuse me, would you like to give your life to God today? Many, many people would come to Christ through that ministry. Mm-hmm. If he didn't quote any Bible verses and didn't hand out Bible tracts and didn't have a big ministry and lights and an internship program. If all somebody did was walk up to strangers with no argument, no fanfare, no even introduction to soften the blow and said, would you like to give your life to God? Many people would come to Christ. Someone's faithful with that. And that makes it really easy for me because I've got a lot going for me, even beyond that. People want to come and hear what I have to say. And I have a few conversational skills, I like to think. So
just a couple.
So I can present the gospel and trust that over the course of my life that God is going to use this good gospel to draw many people out of their sin and into
one of the things
with Jesus.
One of the things that struck me early on in my teaching was that I was not the Holy Spirit. And my job was not to convince my students of anything. My job is to lay it out there and do my best in communication. The rest is up to the Spirit.
Right.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Tell me about this episode that I've heard you talk about in the past. this difficult episode that you had with 3 young people that you met.
Yeah.
And on the road.
Yeah, a long time ago, must have been 7, almost 8 years ago now. My wife and I had just gotten married, and she just left her job and her home, and she was out on the road with me and the rest of the band. And we were in Waco, Texas, playing a concert there. And at the end of the show, just like the end of any other show, we were out talking to young people, sharing the gospel, praying to people. And we talked to a group of 3 kids, Matt, Aubrey, who were boyfriend and girlfriend, and their friend Sam. And standard, we shared the gospel with them, told them what God had done in our lives. And then at the end of this conversation, it looked like at least Matt and Aubrey were interested. And I said, hey, would it be okay if we prayed for you guys before you guys go? And they both said enthusiastically, oh yeah, absolutely, that'd be awesome. And their friend Sam, he's, I looked at him, what about you, man? And he said, no, man, I'm my own God. And so we prayed for Matt and Aubrey, and obviously had to kind of respect the wishes of Sam. And so then they left that conversation and they walked over to their car in the parking lot and drove home. And we got a call a couple days later to inform us that on the way home from that concert, less than 20 minutes after they left, they were in a car accident. And Matt and Aubrey were okay, shaken up, but okay. But Matt had been thrown from the car. But Sam had been thrown from the car and killed. And we wept. My wife wept, especially for days, for that boy, really for all 3 of them, and for his family. And I don't, and I feel like I should say this. I don't claim to, I don't believe and don't even claim to think or suspect that the fact that he died so shortly after saying I'm my own God was somehow God, punishing him or getting even or anything like that. I think that was poured on Christ and is being held back until the appointed time. But what I do think and what I take away from that situation is twofold. One, that the gospel is urgent. Yeah. That the gospel is needed now. A guy, I can't remember his name, someone much smarter than me once said that the gospel is only good news if it gets there in time.
And well said.
Yeah.
Said.
And so that has been a kind of fuel to my fire to share the gospel and to realize I may be the only chance somebody has to give their life to Christ, or at least in Sam's case it was the last chance that he had to give his life to Christ. And 2, it reminded me and put on display for me the incredible mercy of God that even just minutes before Sam was going to take his last breath, minutes before Sam was going to stand before judgment, God was still holding that door open just a little longer. He'd been to church, he had praying parents, believing parents. He grew up in Texas. I'm sure he knew some things about God.
Probably so.
But even still at a metal concert, just minutes before he was going to meet Jesus face to face, God was holding that door open a little longer just to make sure that he had the chance.
That's a great story and a sad story.
Yeah.
So when I think about this being the last tour for you, what are your thoughts? Thinking going out, as it were.
I have to tone down how excited I am because everybody else is so sad that the band's breaking up, and I feel just as excited now as I did when I joined the band.
Nice.
To be honest, I just know that it's right. I mean, as clear as I've been about anything in my life, I know that this is God's plan here. This is God's intention and His dream for my life at this juncture, and I like that. I think one of the things that makes me most excited is that we have seen countless band members come and go and stand on stage and sing songs about how they'll never sell out their faith and get a bunch of Christian tattoos and then get sort of lured in by the premise of being a cool band guy, the premise of acceptance, and the premise of being celebrated and welcomed in by this culture that they're more concerned with than the culture of the kingdom. The people they look up to are rock stars and musicians, and we like to say in the church that you become what you behold. It's really true. So,
Demas who loved this present world.
Right.
Yeah.
And they see this scene, this subculture, this music industry, and they think, yeah, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And they try to hold their their faith in one hand and the world in the other, and it doesn't work. And so
Got to drive right through here.
right, and so they. We've seen a lot of guys come and talk a big game and say we're going to be sold out for Jesus, and they're nowhere to be found now. Many people, and for 10 years we've been committed to the kingdom. We've been committed to proclaiming this gospel. We've been committed to carrying this thing as a ministry.
Yeah.
And I'm excited I'm excited to know that at the last show, I'm going to preach Jesus with more passion and more fire than I did even at the first.
Yeah.
People told me when we first started 10 years ago that I would, as I got older and wiser, then I would calm down a little bit. You don't have to do all that for God to love you, and you can just be cool, and you can do ministry by just being friends with people. And I fully believe that, absolutely. But it always kind of messed with me that people had bought into this idea that zeal and wisdom are in opposition to each other. That as wisdom increases, zeal decreases. I think that's silly. The wisdom that I've gained over the last 10 years has only increased my fire. It's only increased my zeal.
It's interesting today when I was teach a couple high school classes. So I was teaching high school seniors, and I still make their eyes go wide, man. This stuff that I do, because if it drives you from within, it's there and they can see it and they know it. That's huge.
Yeah, that's right, and that's the legacy that we get to leave. To young guys that look up to us,
right?
Or people that maybe they've seen us and they listen to our music, and someday they're going to play music. Now there will always be an example to look to and say, we've seen a lot of people start off as Christians and then decide that maybe they didn't want to do that as they got more entrenched in the music industry.
Yep.
But for today, never backed down.
Yeah.
They never sold out. They never relented in their proclamation of the gospel. They never held back. Those guys were committed to making Jesus the center of attention everywhere they went through the entirety of their career. And I want that to be a standard that young men that maybe are going to be in this industry in the future can look to and say, you know what, the music industry would love it if you would tone it down, but you really don't have to.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Legacy is not what we leave behind, it's who, and it's the people's lives that we impact.
Yeah.
So who we leave behind is our legacy, and that's a good thing. And you've done such great work. I've told so many people, countless people, I can't tell you how many people I've told about you. And I tell them all the time that you are the evangelist for this time and this place and these people. People that I would never reach. I'd never see these folks that you are reaching. And that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So I celebrate that with you, man. That's a great thing. So after this, what's after this?
Good question.
I saw you have a printing company.
Yeah, well, God has just maybe in the last year has really just been stirring in my heart for entrepreneurship. And so this merchandising company that we started is absolutely exploding. We started with 2 employees and then quickly moved to 4. Now we're at 10. We've got a second site that's our production site, and we're hiring 4 more, literally like right now. I think our the sales team manager is bringing 4 more people on today. So it's growing very rapidly and doing really well, and that's exciting to me. Also, one of the things about evangelism that I learned maybe a couple of years ago is people like to talk about the fivefold ministry or whatever, right? In Ephesians 4, and it says that He gives some to be apostles, some prophets, some pastors, some evangelists, and some teachers for the equipping of the saints for the work of the ministry. And we read that, and then what we teach though is that He gives some to be apostles, some prophets, some pastors, and some teachers for the equipping of the saints for the work of the ministry, and then He gives some to be evangelists so they could go out and do the work of the ministry so the rest of us don't have to. And so one of the things that I've learned about what it is really biblically to be an evangelist is that my job is not just to go out and win the lost so that everybody else can go about their business.
Yeah.
My job is to help equip the church, whether you're called to be a pastor or a teacher or a mailman or a trash collector or a bag boy at Walmart or a stay-at-home mom, whatever your assignment in life is. The seat of an evangelist, the office of an evangelist, I think, is to help equip and provoke and inspire the church to be about the work evangelism.
There you
to
go.
be about the work of advancing the kingdom and proclaiming this gospel. So, what's been happening over these last few years is God's been opening a lot of doors for me to be able to go speak places, to speak to the church and conferences, Bible colleges, ministry schools, and things like that. And that I love that. When I started this band, I told them I'll only play in this band if you let me preach. That's been my heart this whole time. So
That's good.
I want to see the church be what Jesus died to make her. And I think that so often we get caught up in building bigger programs and having cooler outreach nights and the hotshot preacher or worship leader, that we forget that if we have experienced Christ and Him crucified, then we have more than enough to be able to be used mightily by God in our own community. And so that's a message that I want to help carry to the church. And so I think that even still after the band, I'll do a bit of traveling.
Good.
And meet with and connect with pastors and help shake things up in their congregation, to inspire and promote them to get out into the city, get out of the four walls, and reach people.
The church needs you, and the church needs your voice, and in a way that you probably neither of us knows right now.
Yeah.
But it will be. And even if He takes you home tonight, you've done your work. You've done your job. For both of us, I feel that way. I'm going to shut this off.
Okay.